Hi, how you doing? I'm doing all right myself. Thanks for asking. I've been hanging out, enjoying the days, watching anime, checking out some older things that I may not have heard of before. So I watched something just now that was pretty damn spicy, and that was called Iria, Zeiram The Animation. There's a colon in there between the words Iria and Zeiram, and Zeiram is Zeiram is spelled Zeiram. For those of you who may not have heard of this or not have seen it, and it was a pretty alright time, pretty fun little 6-episode OVA series from 1994, and I have some pretty good things to say about it for only having it's like a decent 6 kind of experience, But I think there's a lot of things to praise about it, especially in the context of the type of medium that it is, because it's what I'm going to be watching for this entire project of the Old Anime Project. It's these movies and OVAs from the 70s through the 90s that all have the interesting things, and it's something interesting about like the movie OVA. When you're making something not to be broadcast to television, there's more of a sense of cohesion or just purpose or freedom in what you can do. You're not bound by TV restrictions, especially in the case for OVAs. They basically had no restrictions to what they could do aside things you were allowed to film at all. So it allows to have a lot of freedom in what you get to do, and I think the creators get to have a lot of fun with their projects, and you see this really shine in Iria here. And the way this really shines is that this is like some other things I've talked about for this series, like Ninja Gaiden, or even something like Ninja Scroll, or Project Zeomar, which even though I had like shaky opinions on, Iria really stands out in that you can see the animators had a lot of fun coming up with creative fights, creative gadgets, and cool uses of color and animation, and it really shines in this series. So what I really want to talk about first of all is kind of the plot. You basically have this girl, Iria, who's a hunter apprentice. Hunters are kind of like mercenaries that I couldn't really tell if they work for the government or not, but they generally deal with taking down terrorists and hijackers and kidnappers and also people like this. They're basically mercenaries for hire. So she has her older brother, who's an actual hunter, not an apprentice anymore. He kind of gets paid and isn't in training anymore. And she's kind of a reckless, irresponsible, but very determined hunter. And very quickly what happens is they get sent on a mission, and it turns out that the cargo that they needed to retrieve from the mission, the cargo, turned out to be this project that the government was making illegally to make this kind of immortal super weapon person thing that ended up being just kind of like a ruthless killing machine. And they find that out a little bit too late, get attacked, kind of wiped out the whole crew of the ship that was transporting the cargo. And the whole series is now them, particularly Iria, trying to fight this monster. And so there's a lot of action scenes. That's pretty much a bulk of what happens, and that's really fun for, like I've said with something like Ninja Gaiden, this quick action fix where you just get to see badass shit happening on screen. Cool fights, good animation, well choreographed, just really fun things to watch, and that really shines here. That's probably the best part of the series. And the way they fight is kind of like, I describe it as kind of like Batman, because although they are skilled fighters in like hand-to-hand combat and weaponry, and they use guns unlike Batman, but the thing that makes them a lot like Batman is that they just have gadgets on gadgets on gadgets. So much so that it kind of like raises the question of like, how do they have a gadget for this situation? But it reminds me of kind of the campier side of Batman, that old like Adam West style Batman, where he did have a gadget for everything. There's a scene in Iria where she is climbing up the rope of an elevator shaft, and she has to hop over to another one, and there's people in the elevator shaft, in the elevator below her, then she needs to get them rid of them because they're kind of chasing her. And she pulls out this little thing, and it's like basically she hooks it on, and then just 2 scissors just come and cut the rope, And I was like, of course you have a gadget for that. Because they constantly have gadgets for everything. They have gadgets they tossed out just to make an enemy's trip. They have bombs. They have knives. They have, a ton of different bombs. They have all sorts of different weapons they throw. Guns, ammo, smoke bombs, all sorts of crazy gadgets. And the vehicles they drive are pretty interesting too. Most of them are kind of like just typical sci-fi vehicles, but the one guy flies a Da Vinci style. I'd say like the pedal helicopter that Da Vinci had, and it's twisted a little bit, and it's made a little bit different to look and stand out more in more of like a sci-fi kind of setting. And there's also like these tanks that the government has when they're attacking Iria at one point that they have cannons, and the way they charge the cannon is they have a giant pump in the back that fills up with air, and then they compress it, and that's what fires the cannon blast. And it's just all sorts of creative little things like this, and these are all drawn, all these action scenes with cool fight choreography are all drawn using a really bright and colorful color palette, lots of different and diverse colors, and it never really stands out as ugly or something that's, maybe a little too out there. It all works for how colorful it is, and that's something I really appreciated. Also in the terms of kind of art and color, the backgrounds in a lot of shots are really beautiful. And there are some just panning shots of the city, and the setting isn't even that important, but it had this really cool design with these, all the buildings in the city were built as like mushrooms kind of. It was this long tower of like cables and metal, and then it had like the top of the building was like a mushroom. That's the main city that they travel to several different over the course of all 6 episodes. And they're really cool design, and they have a lot of detail in these kind of establishing shots of the city or the island, the vacation resort where another part of the story takes place. Really detailed designs. There's panning shots of like a nighttime city that kind of remind me of something you might see in Akira. It's hard to get as close to some of the city shots in Akira, but they did a pretty good job at making them really lively in terms of like these long like cityscape shots that were just pretty outstanding. Now, where the series really starts to falter for me is where a lot of these action shows tend to falter, and that's just they start to focus on plot, and there's really just, it's not terrible, but there's kind of just a lull in the middle of the series where they just kind of do more political stuff, some more drama. Some characters die, and some characters have to deal with grief and whatnot. And just otherwise what the government's up to with the project and how they're handling it. And it's a little bit interesting, but at that kind of point where I was at like the 4th episode of 6, 4th and 5th episode, though they did have a couple little quick action scenes, they were largely boring, especially episode 4. I think episode 4 was kind of like the lull of the series for sure. But otherwise, it was pretty fun to watch all the way through. I would definitely give it a recommendation if you like those older style animation, you like the action fix, you kind of like just a lot of different cool gadgets. I really think the design team had a lot of fun making these gadgets. I didn't check the source on this. I don't know if it's a manga or not. That'd be, oh boy. I'm gonna put in the comments what the source is for this, because if it's a manga, and yet I still imagine that the design team still got to have some freedom. So even on that, regardless of whether it's a manga or not, they must have had a lot of fun putting together different gadgets for them to use, because it is really fun to see kind of what they toss into the ring next. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty alright time. Like I said, it kind of lulls a little bit when they deal with like the politics and stuff. Other than that, like the action scenes were tight. They were really fun to watch. They were diverse and interesting. And yeah, props to Iria. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I would recommend it to you to check out if you've got like 3 hours or so that you can put aside to bust it out. That's it for this episode of Taupe. For next episode coming out on Wednesday, I'm going to be watching Otaku no Video. So I feel like I've recently had this string of I do use a randomizer, but I've had this string of kind of like more famous movies with Jinro and Akira and now Otaku no Video. So I'm going to check that out. I'll come back on Wednesday and I'll tell y'all what I thought about it, and I advise you to check it out with me. So I will see you later. Bye-bye.